Absolutely, absolutely. You will have everything available as per the AICTE requirements. We'll make sure everything is available to you, whatever is deliberated here. Not only for the 5 days, you can also have access for the future. Yeah, I think we can start off. Over to you, Hemant.
Thank you, sir, Professor Rao. A warm welcome to all our participants. Thank you for joining this design thinking program. It's going to be a very useful program, I'm sure. Professor Rao has put in a lot of effort to make this possible. Like you were sharing earlier, we have caught up over the past month since November, along with Mr. Sayantan Mukherjee, to really develop this course content, to make sure that you receive something that is truly in line with what's happening in industry, as well as you receive a sound grounding in theory. So before I get started, I'd just like us to take a moment of silence in prayer. Okay. So with that, let's get started. So what is the intent of these sessions, the first couple of sessions that I'm going to take? Like Sir said, it's basically on, what is design, how do we cultivate a design attitude in us as well as in our organization. So that is the intent of these sessions. What I want to do with these sessions is to give you a good, nice, wholesome background on design itself, so that as you go into the design thinking sessions with Professor Rao and Mr. Sayantan Mukherjee, you have all of this in mind, and I'm sure they will go into a lot of detail to really take you through the processes, take you through a lot of design thinking methods, a lot of schools of thought, etc. But the intent of these sessions is to sort of pique your interest in the subject, and that's what this is for. Right? So to start off with, we'll start with a quick poll, right? And what I want to ask.
Second.
Sorry to disturb you, sir, but there is a double sound or echo sound that is going on.
Is it for all the participants who can hear it like this?
No, not for me.
No.
I can hear
Not
you.
for me.
No, not for me too, sir. You're audible. You're clear.
Yeah, you're clear. Very, very clear to us.
Not for me as well, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Please feel when we ask some questions, please do use the chat box. Otherwise, it can cause disturbance to the other participants unless there's something very important. I would request you to use the chat box. Okay. So with that, we'll get on to the first poll. I request Professor Rao to bring up the poll, but I'll display the question in front of you. So what this is about what you think. So in an organization, who is in charge of design, right? Is it A, the designer, architect, C, the engineer, or D, a manager? So who do you think is in charge of design in an organization? And I think Professor Rao will be bringing up the poll right now. And I want you to quickly fill that in. Go to the right of your screen. On the third icon, you will see that there is polls. And I think you can click on the polls as Sir brings it up. Right? I don't think it's active yet. We'll just give it a minute for Sir to bring it up. I see a lot of you have already answered.
By the way, Hemant, there are already a couple of answers, which is more than this 4. That says all of the above.
I see that. Right. So I think in the interest of time, we'll continue. I think we just had a slight problem with the polls. It may take some time to come up. But thank you all for answering. In fact, some of you I see have mentioned it, saying that it's all of the above. So yeah, it was a trick question. Essentially, design is not relegated only to the designer or the architect. Everyone in the organization is in charge of design. So thank you for that. So the way I've set up this presentation is a series of questions like this. Right? I want to ask you, and I want to also think along with you about what these questions mean. Right? So the first question I'm asking is, what is design? Right? And the second question I'm asking is, should businesses even consider design if they are not a design and architecture firm? Right? So what we'll do is we'll go through a quick video, right? And I want you to pay close attention to what is there on the video. It's quite a very interesting video. Instead of me speaking, I thought, something like this is going to enhance the experience. So please let me know if you're having any issues, but it should play right now. We have checked it multiple times. So I'm going to play the video now, and please do pay attention.
When people think of design, they often think an elegant chair, a well-turned logo, dramatic architecture.
Sir, the video is not visible.
But that isn't all that design is.
Is it visible to other participants?
Yeah,
It's visible to me.
it is visible.
It is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Visible, sir, visible.
Yes, sir, it is
Sure.
visible. Okay,
Okay.
right, got it. I had pinned you,
Visible.
so it was not visible. Fine.
So I think the
Got it.
video needs to be restarted.
Sure, I'll do that. I've paused it. Just give it a second. Yes.
Design is more. It's more than the drapes or the drop shadows. More than a beautiful UI or a rad concept car. Design is more than aesthetics. Much more. Design is fundamental. It's the predilection to investigate and understand. It's the compulsion to give form to ideas and make sense of disorder. Design is the ability to amend the imperfect. Design is knowing what questions to ask and how to ask them. What's the right problem to solve? How do I solve it? Why should I solve it? In a world in which anyone can now build anything, design is understanding whether something is worth building at all. If you've ever built, tested, shipped, debugged, rebuilt, or reshipped anything, then you're a designer. And there has never been a better moment in history to be a designer. Now is your time to solve real and important problems, to start great and enduring companies, to use curiosity, creativity, and craft to elevate lives. Because design, at its core, is optimistic. It's the call to change what is into what ought to be. It is the attempt to make heart and mind into tools of mass construction, to build a better, wiser, more just, more beautiful world. Design is your gift and your responsibility. Design is the way.
Okay, so I hope everyone had a good look at this. I will share the link later, but this sort of encapsulates the importance of design. Right? As you can see, design solutions are needed everywhere. Right? The video just told us that. Design has to be applied everywhere, right? Because you're coming up with innovative solutions, right? And I think the most important of all is I would like to thank all of you for coming forward, in attending this program. Because as you go out, you go back to your universities, you go back to your workplace, I think your intent is to apply these design thinking solutions, right? And as you sort of take these methods, right, the frameworks to more people, I think it's going to create a huge impact, on our society. I think India is going to benefit deeply by your commitment. And I thank you once again for coming forward to spread this revolution. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at a few lighthearted examples, of what we call jugaad, right? Typically, in the Indian scenario, we also look at this as an innovative mechanism, and no doubt that is. There is innovation over here. So, for example, you see this person over here using his motorcycle to irrigate his fields. Right? Why is this? Because there is a problem of electricity, right, in the rural areas, in the farmlands, right? So there is innovation over here, right? Another funny example over here. A person may not have the resources, but to buy certain things, but he's making do with what he has. He's recycling his pair of jeans, to create a toothpaste and toothbrush holder. Over here, another funny example. A student who needs to make tea, doesn't have a stove. He's using his iron to make a cup of tea. This was a nice one, where instead of buying a whole new fixture to mix hot and cold water, this person has used this method, right? So innovative in their own way. Right? Here's another one. Instead of buying 2 air coolers for 2 rooms, this is how they split the air, right? So we have seen examples like this, across. But what is this? This is jugaad, right? And essentially in English, we can call it a hack, but we need to go beyond this. There is a difference between a hack and innovation, right? What we need to do is help create lasting and scalable solutions. And Professor Rao would have shared the example of Joy Mangano, right? You would have seen the video, right? We need people in a country to come up with solutions that are lasting and scalable and solves a lot of problems. So that's the intent that we have to go in with as we get into deeper and deeper into this design thinking course, right? Okay, so with that, we move on to the next set of questions, right? Why invest in design, right? We know design, we just learned that design is really needed. There are a whole lot of problems in the world that need solutions, and design is the way to go. But what about organizations? Like, why do they need to invest in design? Is it really, the question that they will ask time and again, is it worth the effort and investment, right? Why should I not just spend more on engineering to build more things instead of spending time in design? Why don't I do more marketing? Why don't I allocate more dollars to sales and marketing so that I can get the word out there and get more customers? Is it really worth the investment? And the answer is fairly simple, I think. It is yes. But let's take a look at a few examples over here too, right? Here we have Steve Jobs saying that design is not just what it looks and feels like, design is how it works. I'm sure almost all of you would have come across this, right? But what does this mean for the company, right? If you look at all the products that Apple has been able to come out with, all the innovative products over the years, year after year, you can take a look, because these are publicly traded companies, you can take a look at these tiny number over here, right? And this number is not so tiny after all. This is the market capitalization of Apple. And that's a massive number. It's $2,260 billion market cap, right? So that's insane. That's more than $2 trillion of market capitalization, right? They have found their way to success through design, right? I think Mr. Ravi Kant also mentioned this. They are an innovative company, right? With this, I'll be going into the second poll, Professor Rao. I'm going to be taking another example, and I'm going to ask this very interesting question to all of you. Okay? The second question is, thank you, sir. Which automaker has the largest market capitalization, right? After the chat icon on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see another icon. Please click on the top right. And then the second option over there is polls. Please click on polls, and you select an option and press vote. That's how you vote. Can you just, I would request everyone to use the poll facility instead of typing it in the chat box.
Sir, I'm not able to get that poll option.
You will, so can you see the chat box on the top right?
Sir, I'm attending this on my mobile phone.
Okay, so I'm not sure then. Sure, we will take your on the chat box itself. Let's see what the polls, what the poll is telling us. Right, so we have a lot of votes for General Motors. We have a lot of votes for Toyota. I see that Tesla is catching up. We have 1 vote for Volkswagen. Right, no votes for Hyundai, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, nothing over there. But in the chat box, I see a lot of Volkswagens and Tesla, right, as well as Honda. Right? So I think once again, most of you have got this right. It is actually Tesla, right? And what's the market cap of Tesla? The market cap of Tesla, actually, this is 2 days ago, it was $669 billion, right? I think today when I checked, it was $692 billion, right? And if I go back to this, the market capitalization of Tesla is worth more than all of the other 9 combined. Right? Can you just take a moment to think about that? Tesla, which was born in the year 2003, right, where other companies had like a century's head start, not even a decade or 2 decades, a century's head start, right? Born in 2003, and now has a market capitalization worth more than all the other 9 players combined, right? That's really insane, right? Just think about what is happening. Why? What are the markets valuing? The markets are valuing the future. They are valuing the innovation. They're valuing the design, right? And this is what Elon Musk of Tesla says, and you can see the importation of, what he's saying about design, that it needs, the path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office. It needs to be through the engineering and design, right? So, and that's how much importance he places on design, right? So this is another example. You have beautiful cars, but you don't only have beautiful cars. You have absolutely functional cars. You see this massive screen in a Tesla. You have a secondary screen over here. Everything can be controlled. Using your phone, you can back out your car. With the right equipment in your Tesla, you have auto drive. The car can switch lanes on the freeways, on the highways of America very easily, right? It can do all of these innovative things because it took a different perspective of what the paradigm was, right? It's sort of insane because, we talk about innovation, and when you think about a large player, right? Like imagine you're starting a company today, or let's say you are in Elon Musk's shoes in 2002, and you're thinking about going against the likes of Toyota and General Motors and Volkswagen, right? And you are a nobody, right? And it just seems impossible. But innovation can make this difference, right? The paradigm for the earlier generation of cars was.
Are you going through the new this thing?
Professor Rao. Professor Rao, can I continue? Yeah. Okay. So the previous generation of cars, the paradigm was, the engine, right? The petrol engine, the diesel engine, the auto engine. But the paradigm changed. When as resources became available, all the lithium resources in the world, all the batteries of the world, as they came online, Tesla grabbed this innovation opportunity and really decided to redesign the entire auto industry, right? And we can see the fruits of it here at $692 billion today, actually. Right? Now, with all of you who are not really convinced with these examples, because obviously, it's not design and design thinking alone that got them there, but there is, other proof, right? There is this report by McKinsey. They also have a DVI index where they say the best design performers increase their revenues and shareholder returns at nearly twice the rate of their industry counterparts, right? And I think Mr. Ravikant earlier also shared a report like that. So we know, if we go back to answer this question, right? If I just quickly go back to say that, is it worth the effort and investment? Truly, we can see it is, right? So let's keep moving. With that, we'll move to the next one, which is, who comes first, right? So this is a quick poll once again, right, for all of you. Who do you think comes first? Like, we have established that, design is necessary, design is needed, it makes a difference to the business, right? So, you design for the user, you design for the customer, but who comes first? Does the user or the customer come first, or does the business come first, right? So do we have that poll ready, or should we ask them to leave it in the chat box?
It's launched.
Right. So we have the poll launched as well. And I see some of you have put it in the chat as well. So you can see poll 2 of 2 towards the right-hand corner of the poll. I see a lot of answers there, I think some people are answering both, right? Right. So yes, thank you for your answers. I think this is right. I mean, people are saying both. Some people are saying users. Mostly is the customer or the user. That's right. So I just want a moment to run through this, right? And as we get into design, and as you get into any design school, or even if you do these design courses, you will see a lot of importance placed on the user, and that's why you have what we call user-centered design or human-centered design, right? And that's the first thing we learn. And then we are taught time and again that you have to keep the user at the center of everything you do, right? But is the answer as obvious as that, right? Personally, I don't think so, right? Why? Because as you build for the user, right, there can be no end to the user's needs, right? So you could just keep on innovating, you could keep on developing, right? But even if you need to keep on developing and innovating, how do you sustain that innovation unless it makes business sense? Unless the business is in business, right, ready to invest those dollars back into that innovation, right? How do you really innovate for the next cycle, right? So the answer is not really straightforward, right? We have to make sure that the design of anything, fits into the overall innovation framework of the organization, and at the end of the day, meets the business needs, right? So the business needs to survive in order to fund further innovation, right? So I thought we could take a moment to think about that, right? And really, spread that word as well with others. Sometimes it's not as obvious. Okay, so with that, I want to go to the next part, right? All of these amazing companies, and I think Mr. Ravikant covered a lot more. I put just 3 examples over there. They have massive businesses, right? They are profitable, right? They have great revenue, right? Yet they place design at the center of everything that they do. They place the user at the center of everything that they design, right? So they are employing design thinking and design methods. Right? So with that, I want to ask, sort of get into this area of a very interesting thing of why design first. And this is a question most asked in software development companies, I'm sure, or even in hardware development companies, where people are asking, why waste time on design? Like, why not just go and build it, right? Why don't we just code, the program or the website or the application and put it out there, right? And here I want to take a personal example of mine. So about 8 or 9 years ago, I was at this startup called Treatle. It was fairly well funded. It was founded by a Harvard Business School alum. Right? We had a lot of investments. We had a great team. We had engineers from the likes of Stanford, right? And we were doing cutting edge design and development, right? Where we were really building things that were not available on Facebook at that time. They were not available on Google at that time. Right? And we were super happy doing all of this. And we spent about 1.5 years building this, and we launched it. And there was a lot of interest from the consumer segment. There was a lot of consumer from the B2B segment as well. In the end, we ended up getting about 10,000 customers. But unfortunately, the startup failed. Right? Why did it fail? I think to learn what the user needed took a long time, because we were building and coding and testing and launching takes time. What if there was a better way to get the answers up front, to know the answer, whether the user is going to like it, before you actually build it, right? And there is a way, right? And that is exactly precisely what we are discussing today. We are talking about design and design thinking and prototypes. That is something that is available to us, right? And there are so many kinds of prototypes. It could be a simple paper prototype that you quickly draw out your idea and go and talk to the people on the street. You could build something. There are many wireframing tools available today. There's so many ways to validate your concept, right? And that actually brings me to this sort of lean startup thinking model, the lean model, which is you build, measure, and learn. So in this lean model, what they say is you build something very scrappy at first. It need not be the full thing. You build an MVP, a minimum viable prototype, and you put it out there. You see how users are using it. You measure what is going on, and based on those measures, your hypothesis, etc., you learn, right? And based on that learning, you build again, right? So in this cycle, what is of premium importance? Of premium importance is the fact that you need to learn about what the user wants as quickly as possible, right? And therefore, my proposal is that you don't need to actually build. What you need to build is just a prototype. And that's what design thinking is great for, that you build a prototype, you put it in front of people, right? It need not be the full code that is available and scalable, and you learn from that. And I think this is going to make a difference, to how organizations can succeed at a faster pace. They learn at a faster pace. They don't utilize all of the resources building things that people do not want to use, right? They can run more experiments. I think Mr. Ravikant talked about the culture of experimentation. Organizations need to get into this culture of experimentation where they experiment more and they use whatever funding they have to run a lot of experiments and then come up with the product that they feel is best suited to what the market wants, to what the user wants. So I think that is the answer, why we need to design first and not build and code first. So we talked about software companies, but I'm sure most of you would have a question around, how do I do the design process in hardware-related companies? Right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But before I get into discussing that, let me play a quick video.
I think we're finally at that point. The time is ripe for robotics. I think we've hit the point where computers are cheap enough and sensors are cheap enough. And so now is the time when robots can come in the world and help people. I'm Steve Cousins. I'm the CEO of Savioke. Savioke makes robots for the service industry. We make robots that can move around by themselves in human spaces and help people out.
One of the huge things that's happened in the last several years is that mobile phones have significantly reduced the cost of computation and sensing in a whole bunch of different areas. And the robotics field has now been able to take advantage of that rapid drop in sensor prices. And so now that's enabling a world where robots can be aware of the presence of humans near them and exist safely in that environment.
How can we put robots in the world? The way we do that is by finding something that the robots can do that's more valuable than it would cost us to put them out there. So the first use case is really simple. You're staying at a hotel and you need a toothbrush or a shaving kit, or you're hungry and you call down to the front desk and you say, hello, can I have a toothbrush, for example? And the person at the front desk gets a toothbrush, puts it in the robot, types in the room number, and the robot goes off on its own to your room. And when it gets to your door, it calls your phone, you open the door, and when it sees the door open, so it opens its lid and you get out whatever it is that you were getting delivered.
Robots are really complicated, and we're trying to bring them out into the world where they can interact with people. And what we want to make sure is that when people receive that delivery in a hotel, it's exactly what they expect, and moreover that they love interacting with our robot, because we want it to be a fun experience for them. Design is really the process of asking, what should those robots do and how should it do it? And what should they look like as they're performing those duties?
What basic shape is this robot going to take? Where are we going to put items when we're sending deliveries? And how tall should it be? We actually went through about 6 different prototypes over the last 9 months. And each step of the way, with everything that we generated from one prototype to the next, or one storyboard to the next, or one sketch to the next, we were gaining more knowledge about what we think the best answer is. We want it to be very friendly and approachable and not seem too big, especially like in cluttered hallways. The robot has a slender taper to reduce the visual volume. The base has a flaring towards the bottom to really make it seem planted and safe. There's even like a little arc just below the screen to make it feel happy.
Success for us is putting robots out in the world, getting robots into the hospitality industry, and then getting robots into adjacent industries, and basically making an impact and continuing to create robots that can help people.
Yeah, so this was an example of how design was done at Savio. It's a hardware company, and the interesting thing was that they used a 5-day sprint. Sorry, once again, I think it's playing. Yeah, so they used a 5-day sprint, and there is this book by Google Ventures, the Design Sprint, and I think all of you should read that. They talk about how they go through this process, and just imagine validating a hardware-related idea, a hypothesis as to what should they put in front of customers. Like how tall will the robot be? What will it's a very touchy subject because you're trying to humanize something that is an object, and how will people react to it, right? And you're sort of going into their rooms, and there is going to be that feeling of, is someone invading my privacy? So it's a different kind of concept that is being put out there, and they were able to validate this through a design sprint. So design and validation is possible in a very short time in hardware companies as well, right? With respect to prototyping, I think I would like to share with you one more presentation on the video of Mr. Dyson. And I think this is a fantastic way of also looking at this entire prototyping exercise. Here we go.
James Dyson's vacuums and other products are now sold in 67 countries. And only on CBS This Morning, Dyson will join us with his newest creation. But first, a look at what inspires an inventor.
The principles behind the vacuum cleaner motor have hardly changed since Faraday's motor in 1831.
It began over 30 years ago. James Dyson was frustrated by his vacuum cleaner's lack of power, so he set out to improve it. The experiment took many years, with over 5,000 prototypes.
That's 5,000 failures before I'd cracked it.
But in 1993, the bagless vacuum cleaner was born.
The new Dyson vacuum cleaner. We've said goodbye to the bag.
The machine was an instant hit. Within years, Dyson's dream had grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Research and innovation remained key to Dyson's success. His improvement principle has been applied to other everyday items.
Our solution uses airfoil technology.
From bladeless fans to high-speed hand dryers.
We wanted to make a cordless machine that wasn't any heavier.
His latest invention is a cordless vacuum. It runs on battery power. He calls it his fastest and most powerful machine yet. James Dyson's vacuums and other products.
Great. So we have gone through the cycle of why design is necessary, why design is important, why design can make a big difference to the bottom line of any company, right? And then how do you go through this cycle, right? Should you do design first? Should you code first? Should you prototype first? And I think all of these examples that I've used gives us an insight into what organizations, immensely successful organizations did. Organizations like Apple and Tesla and Dyson, they created a multi-billion-dollar market. I think design, in conclusion, is necessary. So the question we are left with over here is, what's the right time to invest in design, right? And really, the time is right at the beginning, right? As a startup, right? Even before you get hold of your first developer, I think it would make sense to get hold of a designer. I think it makes sense to prototype. It makes sense to validate, right? And that is what the entire design thinking process is about. We will be going into more details in the upcoming sessions, and we'll get into that. But with that, I am at the end of the first part of this presentation, so I would look to Professor Rao to ask, should we take questions? Should we take a break? Should we continue? Or what do you want to do, sir?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions in the chat box.
Right, sir.
One is the question is, explain to everyone why design is something that every organization needs to pay attention to instead of building straight away, is what the question from Aisha Khan. And if she's there, maybe she can even explain or expand the question so that we can understand what she wants to know.
Right, Aisha. Could you explain? I didn't get the question.
Hello, good evening. I actually wasn't asking a question. I was answering a query by someone else in the chat. Sorry if it came across as a question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, the comment before mine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. And Mr. Sunil Kapadia, you seem to be having some question. Can you ask it, sir?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So till now, I'm not fully clear, what our speaker is, going to talk about. That's the only, curiosity is going on in my mind. He has, shared many things regarding the importance of design, but what speaker is, going to talk about what, that is still not clear to me. That's the reason I put up one or two slides for the chat box. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Sunil. So I think what I'm trying to get at is what happens typically when you come to the industry, and when you go work at organizations. What we see is that people are always ready to jump the gun, right? They want to get to building something right away before they follow the necessary steps, right? As we heard earlier, and as we all know, skipping one or two steps, hurts the overall company, right? It hurts the direction of the company. Okay. Professor Rao, could you mute that person? Right. So for the benefit of everyone, if someone else had this question, I think Mr. Sunil got an important call. But what we see in industry is people are ready to jump the steps, right? And not everyone shares this belief that design should come first, and design is necessary, and design is important, and is in the interest of the long-term financial health of the organization, right? So this is a way to bring out the importance of design. What is design and what is the importance of design, and the way to go about doing design, right? So I think that's the answer to what Mr. Sunil had. Are there any questions?
Yeah, there is one more. Yes. Is design thinking? Divyanshi Agarwal, can you ask, ma'am, since you have asked a question in the chat box?
No, sorry, sir. This is Dr. Manish Agarwal. Actually, I've logged from my daughter's mail ID right now.
Okay.
Sorry
Okay.
Okay. So actually, what seems to me, whatever I have heard from last 1 hour, that design thinking, when we are talking about developing prototype also. So what I feel that design thinking is more or less the part of engineering. How can I relate it to business management?
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think we will cover more examples as we get deeper into this. And I think towards the end of this workshop, you will have a much clearer picture, right? But the idea is that the outcomes is for the business. It's not only for engineering. It's not only for that. Like, what are you expecting out of this prototyping exercise, right? The intent is not to prototype. The intent is to validate the business assumption, right? Like if you are going to say, personally, I'm going to invest, let's say, 1 crore rupees into this, right? Before you invest that 1 crore rupees, won't you like to de-risk what you're trying to do by saying that, let me invest just 1 or 2 lakh rupees and prototype this and see if the market really needs a solution like this, right? So that is your business context, right? You are sort of de-risking it and you're getting to the bottom of the problem. That's one way to look at it. You're getting to the bottom of the problem and what the market actually needs. And that is how it is placed in your business context.
Yeah, but sir, when we are developing prototype actually, or whenever we are going to start up a business, Doesn't it like that it is more or less developing a new product? It is again a part of engineering.
Could you clarify? I mean, what is the sort of business you have in mind, sir?
It could be any, sir. It could be any, sir. Like what happens that we are seeing designing cars, or we have talked about Amazon, or we have talked about Apple so far. So when we are coming to these businesses, they are more or less depend on the features. When we add features into any of the product, that would be the part of an engineer. In that case, business manager only pass the problem to engineering team. So again, what I feel that when engineering comes more in design thinking in comparison to marketing or HR.
Right. So let me bring in a new concept here. I didn't cover this as part of my presentation. Let me talk about a product pod, right? So what's a product pod? A product pod consists of like a product manager who represents the business, right? So that person understands business, but also understands design and also understands technology, right? So that's the first, let's say the first leg of the tripod, right? Then you have a product designer, right? This person is actually going to design the solution, right? And three, you have the technology person or the engineer, right? Now these three people make up the product pod or the tripod, right?
Okay.
And we see that in all well-to-do businesses, businesses that are doing well in the market, bringing innovative products to the market, that this structure is what is being followed at all these successful companies, right? So it's not only, it's not, so this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to break down the barrier of saying that there is a different design organization within the overall business organization. There's a different finance and business organization silo, right? And there is a different technology silo, right? And we are trying to say that all of these silos need to come together. The silos need to be broken down, and they have to make up these product pods to have successful products in the market, right? These three units need to work together. The product manager who represents the business, the product designer who will design the solution, and the engineer who will build the solution. They need to work together. We talked about, what is important, right? You need something that is feasible to build, right? The technology person will tell you that. You need a solution to be designed. The designer will do that, right? And you need the product or the solution to be business viable, right? So the product manager will tell you that. These three need to work together to bring that product or solution to the market. Only then it will be successful, right? So that's how it works together.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
There is a question from Professor Sandesh Jain. Professor Sandesh Jain, can you speak out, sir? Can you ask the question yourself? Professor Sandesh Jain? Yeah, well, his question is, I have still no clear idea with the concept of design. Can you please explain what design is?
Right, sir. Okay, thank you for the question. I think in the simplest way to look at this in very layman terms, instead of going into technical definition, is to design is to look at all the problems that we have around us and to come up with a solution that meets the needs of the end user. I think in simplest terms, that's how I would put it to explain the concept of design to anyone. You have problems all around. How can you come up with innovative solutions to present a problem, a solution that makes sense to the end user as well as to the business? I think that is what design really is in the broadest sense. Like the video talked about, it is not about telling someone to beautify a PPT or to color correct a picture, right? Or to spruce up a web design, or just to take a mobile app and make sure that everything fits, everything that you want from a business perspective. It is much more than that, right? And in the broadest possible terms, design is really coming up with innovative solutions. So I hope that sort of answered your question, Mr. Professor Sandesh.
Yes, sir.
I think,
Sir, what I was asking was
yes,
that
Sandesh.
coming out with solution for any particular problem and coming out with a solution with design thinking, how these two things differs from each other. That is,
Right.
for example, when I give my student a project, I give them a problem statement and I ask them to come up with a solution for that thing.
Right.
And if I want to ask them that you have to think like using design thinking for this particular problem and come up with a solution, what kind of difference this particular 2 points would have?
Right, right. So thank you, Professor Sandesh. I think now that you put it in context of the student, I appreciate the answer that you're seeking. So when you give the problem statement to the student, the solution that the student comes up with is one of a possible range of solutions. Right now, as you learn more about design thinking in the next 4 or 5 days, you will appreciate that there are a whole bunch of solutions that you could come up with, right? Because ideating is part of that process, right? So, but the true power of the design thinking methodology is that you get to validate what is of use to the end user, right? So you will appreciate this answer more by the time we finish the workshop, towards the last day. But really, this is the difference, that there are a whole spectrum of solutions that can be proposed, but what's the right one that you want to build for, you want to take to market for? I think at the end of the design thinking process, you will appreciate that more. So I'm sorry if the answer is a bit hazy right now, Professor Sandesh, but I would ask you to have some patience and go through this program, and you will be able to appreciate what is to come at the end of 5 days. Is that all right, Professor Sandesh?
Yes, sir. I was just thinking that wherever we ask our students to come up with a solution, we ask them to identify who the stakeholders are, who would be using their solutions, and then identify how they would be getting benefited from the solution.
Right.
The design thinking, I'm expecting that we would be coming with new methodologies that would be helping us to identify the solution in more proper manner. So I'm
Yes,
looking
yes.
forward for the next 4 days, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the question, Professor Sandesh. I think that is exactly the intent of these 2 sessions, that this sort of piques your interest on what is to come in the next session. And I know Professor Rao and Mr. Sayantan Mukherjee will go into it in very much detail and bring out a range of things that you can use, a range of tools that you can use to develop solutions. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the questions that we have received earlier, whether design thinking is only for engineering, I think you will find the answer in the next couple of days with some examples from the real life experiences, that design thinking is for everyone. The very fact that we have audience participants from medicine, from engineering, from law, from architecture, all that indicates that yes, there is a tremendous amount of interest in applying these principles or the models of design thinking in various domains. So all of you will be convinced that design thinking is not for engineering alone, and design is no longer a word that legitimately an architect or an engineer can use. In fact, the problem with the word design is that it has been extensively used in these 2 areas, architecture and engineering. But now I think more managers are using it because design thinking is becoming a part of the strategy in any organization. So to put things in perspective, what Mr. Manish Agarwal has asked, it is definitely a way forward for many of these organizations to thrive in future. Design thinking has to be built into the organizational thinking process, organizational capabilities. It has to be built in, and in the next 2-3 days, we are going to go into the details of how this can be done. I think that would answer the questions related to whether it is only for engineering domain and the hardcore hardware business. And there are If there are any other questions, you can ask us, no problem. Fortunately, all three of us are here on the program, so each one of us.
Professor Rao, I just wanted to give one example because this point came about engineering and design thinking. You know what? This is actually a story. You know, so where I live in Kolkata, it's very famous for something called pani puri. We called fuchka. So one fine day, we saw a new guy in our locality, and he is new in that area. He have not sold fuchka before. So, and he was trying to get the market that is already there by other guys, other people, other fuchka wallahs. So I was quite a regular. I love fuchka, so I was quite a regular. So I started seeing a change in pattern, the way he's doing. So he was a conventional fuchka wala before, who just mixes the there's this potato, there is this certain stuff initially. Then slowly he started having something which is the mitha pani, and this wasn't very common here. By the way, mitha pani in fuchka wasn't common at all. So I was, by curiosity, I asked him one day that, what's up? You are having something mitha also? Why are you doing that? So he said something very interesting and extremely relevant to this context. He said, you know what? I have noticed one thing. People have fuchka here. They ask spicy fuchka, and then they go to that sweet shop in front of me, and they have rasgulla there. Now, probably their taste bud wants something sweet just after they have something really spicy. So I thought, if I can have a little bit of mitha water with this, then probably I will have a little more sale of my pani puris, a few very spicy, a few with the mitha water. And he actually could gather more business from doing this. Now, this is something which you call actual design thinking. You know why? Because all the 5 processes of design thinking has been followed here. May not be visible very spontaneously to you, but he has done it, and I have learned from him that exactly how it can be applied. So it's not only engineering. Believe us, it's not only engineering. It's you can apply it anywhere across.
Yeah, actually now people are talking of designing life, right? So we don't go into those philosophical areas, but certainly designing life is a new way of looking at design thinking. Yeah. Any other questions that you all have?
Sir, my name is Manikandan.
Yes, sir.
I just want to appreciate Mr. Hemant, because a lot of people are expecting results right away, but he was positioned in the right place at the right time. Sir, you had instilled a lot of inspiration on design thinking, and that is what is going to make us very interested to learn the next few days. So thank you so much for your perfectly mix of videos and PPTs and your presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your appreciation, Mr. Manikandan.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell you that right in one session, don't expect any finality of what design thinking is. It's not like giving a spanner or
Please enter your personal identification number.
And the answers. This is being built over the next 4 days, since part of the day is over. But at the end of this program, I am 100% sure, me and my team of the instructors or the resource persons, we have very clear idea. The path is very clear. We will lead you to a thorough understanding of what design thinking is, starting from design, the concept of design, the design attitude, from there to design mindset, to design thinking, and the tools of design thinking to be used not only for engineering, not only for services, for academics, for agriculture, whichever the areas that we are talking about. Most of you are, since you are all from the academic institutions, a good number of you, you will understand how this design thinking can be used in your course delivery, online classes, placement activity, whatever we're talking about, summer internship. In all these areas, you'll be able to leverage design thinking to make you effective as a person, at an individual level, to make your institute more competitive in delivering what the students are looking for. Like our Vice Chancellor has said, you are we want our students to be industry ready, and I'm sure you will be able to achieve it by following what we're going to discuss in the next 3-4 days. I hope that makes it clear. So don't expect everything to be rolled in 60 minutes session. This layer by layer, spiral by spiral, it's going to be built on.
Yes, sir. I think that's very important to set that perspective, because I see a lot of questions that are there, and please expect to find these answers over the next few days. And I think a lot of these can be answered. I think you can answer them on your own by the time we get to the end of this workshop. So, if we could.
And for Manikandan's question, whether you are going to give any further readings, as absolutely you will get a full set of further readings for the design thinking to develop further in the design thinking area. Apart from what is given in these 5 days, you will have a pack of recommended readings or books and activities and videos, which will be given to you towards the end of the program on the 5th day. Yes, Mr. Manikandan, does it satisfy you? Okay. So I think we have.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. So we have just started off the journey with the concept of design. Now we will continue, because we just have another 1 hour and 15 minutes or so. 1 hour and 15 minutes or so for continuing the discussion. Maybe I request Mr. Hemant to continue with the second part of the design aspect.
Right, sir. So this is the topic for the second half of today's session, which is basically cultivating and nurturing a design attitude. And how do we go about that? So for design and design attitude, I would like to quote Professor Laszlo Moholy, who was the founder of the Institute of Design. It's a very famous design school. It was actually conceptualized as the Chicago Design School in 1937, became the Institute of Design, later merged and became an arm of the Illinois Institute of Technology. Incidentally, it's called the New Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was a famous school in Europe, and due to the presence of Nazi Germany, Professor Moholy was invited to the US to start a program there and to start a new school there. The IIT, the Institute of Design, is also very famous for instituting the first PhD level program in design, and a lot of products have been designed through this institute. Those interested can quickly Google and find out the range of things that they've come up with. So it's a very reputable school for design. But here is what Professor Moholy says about design attitude. Right? Designing is not a profession, but an attitude. Design has many connotations. It is the organizations of materials and processes in the most productive way, in a harmonious balance of all elements necessary for a certain function. It is the integration of technological, social, and economic requirements, biological necessities, and psychological effects of materials, shape, color, volume, and space. Thinking in relationships. Right? So the design and design attitude answers will not come to us right off the bat. We need to give it time to absorb, our minds to absorb all of these things that we are getting exposed to. We need to give it time to really delve into our minds and create that mindset that is necessary for design. Right? Something else. The idea of design and the profession of the designer has to be transformed from the notion of a specialist function into a generally valid attitude of resourcefulness and inventiveness, which allows projects to be seen not in isolation, but in relationship with the need of the individual and the community. Right? These are some things that we have discussed. It was discussed during the presentation of our chief guest, Mr. Ravikant. I have discussed it in the previous one, and it will be discussed through the succeeding presentations as well, right? That what is design, who's a designer, right? But I think the important thing over here is really, this line about inventiveness, about resourcefulness, about coming up with innovative solutions. I think that's a basic theme that's going to go into the workshop as is. Right? So here I want to have a quick panel with Dr. Rao and Mr. Sayantan Mukherjee, and what I'm going to do is basically ask a few questions. We're going to take time to discuss some of this, and then we can have our own take of what is going to be possible. So with that, I'll just stop sharing my screen for some time. Has it stopped sharing?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So with that, an open question to either Dr. Rao or you, Sayantan. What is your take on what's a design attitude? What do you feel is a design attitude?
I'll go after Professor Rao.
Okay. Well, I think to my mind, design has been sort of appropriated by the engineering community, particularly from the post-industrial revolution. When the industrial engineering came in, a lot of design aspects have come into the fore. And every time we talk about design, we only think about the engineering design part of it, either it is civil engineering, mechanical engineering, or even electronics, whatever. It's only now, at least in India, we are now looking at things beyond the engineering realm. We are not looking at the take problems anywhere, any problem, whether it is hunger, poverty, social unrest, cleanliness, whatever we talk about. We have not really been able to bring in any change, at least in our context. Whereas in industry, they have been able to bring in because they have institutionalized the design thinking process, the 5 stages of design thinking. Why is that happening in those big companies that we've talked about, whether it is Apple or Microsoft or any of the Airbnb, Coca-Cola and all that? When they have confronted a situation, they have been able to go into the depth of it, understood it empathized with the customers, understood the problem, deep dived into it, and finally came out with some alternatives which have satisfied the end users. If we use the same approach of 5-stage approach in our day-to-day life, whether it is a social problem or even our own personal issues, I think we will be able to definitely find better solutions than what we can do. That is why design thinking has now become an attitude, the way you look at things, the way you are. Therefore, where will the change start? The change will start from me as an individual. If I can change my thinking, then I can change the thinking elsewhere. That is why design thinking, I would say, is an attitude. And now we are now talking about going beyond that. You're saying it's a mindset. You create a mindset of analyzing, not just analyzing from the engineering perspective, but from the user perspective. I think design thinking talks about the user perspective and solve the problems. That is my take on the design as an attitude.
See, I had the luck to interact with a lot of young people when I was working in Mahindra. So one thing that I have seen over there is sometimes, often, and I think that many of us, many of people who are here, being professors themselves, they may have interacted with students and found that there is a dearth in the confidence of students. Sometimes they expect that probably design is something which is something very high profile stuff, something with a certain level of people only can go ahead and do. But it takes real time to explain them that is something, that's an attitude which is already there within us. We just have to cultivate and use it more. And one example that I always love to give that design is everybody's domain and it's an attitude natural, only that you have to practice it, is the first time when I tried making roti, chapati. Okay, so I tried it once and I tried doing it. Now, for me, it was more of like, say, why do I make roti? Now, it's a food that somebody is going to have and is going to feed my stomach. That's it, right? So there is nothing design that has to go into it, but that's a product. In other, that's a product. Now, I bet you, go ahead and make a shapeless roti and show it to your mother. I mean, my mom got terrified. Why is it not round? Now, my question was why it has to be round. It's okay. I mean, end of the day, what matters is that we have a roti, right? But that's what important thing in human being is. We have a natural keen of not only to look at the functionality of a product, but also the aspects that make us believe that this is not yet perfect. We have to go ahead and make it, design it in a way that it looks perfect also, not only the functionality of things. And here I actually remember something that Michelangelo once said. He said that I saw the angel in the marble and curved until I set him free. Now, this is something that's a designer as an attitude says. They look at a marble and they don't see it as a box marble. They see something hidden into it and wants to get it out. So design as an attitude, what Professor Rao spoke of is the functionality part of it. I am talking about adding the design aspect to the functionality of a thing, which is why we spoke so much about Apple and we compare it with Samsung and say why Apple has done quite a bit more. Probably because of this attitude, and that's what I believe in all human being has.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Sayantan. I think very beautiful answers on really diving into the psyche of people and how it can make an impact on society, on organizations everywhere, right? And truly, I sort of echo the sentiments that you have brought out. You know, I truly believe that design is going to flow out of everyone. It is there within everyone, right? And they need to bring forth these solutions to any problem that they see, right? And by going through this workshop, they are going to get the frameworks and the tools to sort of have a structure as they approach all the problems that they see, right? So eventually, it is all about the difference that they want to make, and therefore, I believe it's also an attitude. So, taking off from there, a follow-up question that I would like to ask is, how do we really, cultivate and nurture a design attitude? Like, is it that important? Like, do we really need to cultivate and nurture a design attitude? And how do we do it? So, I don't know who would like to go first. Professor Rao, Sayantan, whoever wants to go, please.
Fine, I'll take this question first because this is something that I always, it's a very close to my heart question, that how you actually nurture this design attitude. One of the things that I always talk about is that, human being, it doesn't matter whether you are an introvert or an extrovert. One thing that you have to probably keep on trying to do is to experience things that you are not used to. Now, naturally, we are always we are people who want to stay in our comfort zone, and that's one of the biggest reason why design thinking has been out there for quite long. Everybody knows the 5 stages of design thinking, and they want to inculcate this, try to practice this, but most of the time they fail in inculcating the design attitude in themselves. And the reason they couldn't do it is because they're not coming out of the convenience of the shell of comfort. As a human being, if you want to inculcate this, if you want to nurture this design attitude, first thing is to engage with others, to go out and seek experiences beyond your world. Go to places, take a lot of pictures, see what probably a small bird or an animal is doing. I would suggest, I love searching one website which is called Ask Nature, asknature.org. This is something that you definitely should check out. You know what? This is something which is there is a line, there is a stream different called biomimicry, which is there is a lot of engineering marvel that probably nature has already have answers to. you can actually go ahead and look at all this, and you will realize that there is already so much existing, right? So these are things that you should keep on doing, and once you practice this, once you start doing it, this becomes a practice, this becomes a hobby. You will realize that you are slowly starting to inculcate or nurture the design attitude. Professor Rao?
Thank you, Santan. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I think if you want to really cultivate the design attitude, in the previous session, somebody asked what is the chance of failure in design thinking, and things will fail. Is design thinking a foolproof method and all that? Design thinking is basically trying out different solutions. It's not like mathematics. It's not like physics, where you have maybe unique solutions and straight answers. Here we are trying to find out solutions in a very uncertain area, area where the problems are not very clear. And therefore, design thinking requires the willingness to accept failures, willingness to accept mistakes. So if you want to cultivate that attitude, first I think our levels of empathy have to go up. We are not very empathetic generally. That is number one. Number two, our tolerance for mistakes has to go up. In our society, at least, what I've seen is that from our childhood, if you do something wrong, you are first reprimanded, rather than trying to understand the child why he or she has done something wrong, and then we tell them as an order that don't do it again, rather than learn from that and improve on that. Now, that learning from the experience or an iteration, to put it in a design thinking terminology, and improving in the next iteration is what is required, whether it is a company or even in a personal level. In most of our companies, we know for sure if you do something wrong, either you are shown the door or you are very badly reprimanded. So the organization's perspective, if you look at design thinking as a long-lasting, sustainable way of running businesses, they must improve their ability to tolerate the mistakes of people. I can give you the example of 3M, where they allow an employee to spend 20% of time on doing something innovative. They don't mind putting money into that, and no questions asked even if you fail. No questions asked even if you fail, and if you succeed, you are a stakeholder in that. And therefore, no wonder that they have about 35,000, more than 35,000 patents to their credit, and thriving businesses. So if you want to cultivate the design attitude, I think learn to be empathetic to your employees, to your people, to your family members, whatever. Number two, let them reflect, discuss, reflect, and improve upon the solutions so that they are able to learn how to come up with where they want to reach. That is what I think is required.
Absolutely fantastic answers from Professor Rao and Sayantan. I don't think I have much to add. I think you have also gone on to talk about how organizations themselves can nurture and cultivate design attitudes as well. From a personal level, I feel that first taking ownership of the problem is a vital step, a vital first step of, cultivating and nurturing a design attitude in yourself. First you have to take ownership of the problem and not push it to someone else. I think we also have this tendency to say it is somebody else's problem or somebody else is going to solve it, right? So I think that's a very important attribute. And then I think the second most important thing is to really think about a wholesome solution, right? And not try to take any shortcuts there. What I mean by this is, let's not be narrowed by the tunnel vision of a profit-making organization only. I mean, let's not keep profit as the only goal. I think I would like to bring in that business angle, right? Why do businesses exist? Because eventually businesses exist to do good in society, and the money that they earn, the profits that they earn, enables all of this, right? So when I talk about a wholesome solution, what I mean is that how can it benefit all stakeholders? And I think that's very important to cultivating a design attitude, because this is what we are going to discuss through the design thinking process, is that how does it make sense for everyone. So I think these are important aspects. Sayantan, I would like to ask you, would you want to add anything on how organizations should cultivate and nurture design attitudes? Sayantan,
Yeah, sorry. Probably one or two lines. You actually, and Professor Rao also have given quite a depth details. Only from my personal experience, one thing that I would like to add is that if you have a clear-cut aim that this is exactly what I want to do, this is how I want to nurture innovation in my organization, I am going to follow this methodology. Say, for example, design thinking methodology, or say, it has to be clearly mentioned as a mission statement and has to be percolated well. Okay, and when I say percolated well below is what I mean is probably wherever your employees are, wherever they are, whatever they are doing, you have to have that mission statement pasted or at least kept there, so that every day fresh when they come to the organization, the first thing that they see is what the company wants to provide. Like, say, for example, if you get into a Ola or an Uber, if you tell them that exactly this is where I want to go, they will take you easily. But if you are just sitting there and say, chalo, let's start, they will go haywire. Like, so this is exactly like that. You give them an aim. So that's one thing. And the other thing that you do is, when you have new joinees, they are very fresh. They are not somebody who has bias, and they are not the experts, I must say. And the ideas are fresh. You should encourage those at the very beginning. You should let them try out new things. There may be a lot of failures, it does happen, but if you allow that, the margin of your getting profit out of it to the margin of the loss that you make in allowing people to experiment is way more. So go ahead and try these two things out, and it works really. That's it, Hemant. That's what I wanted to add.
Thanks, Anthony. I think that's great. How can you percolate it down to everyone? I think that's very important. Just to end, I would like to approach this question from another angle, right? From a perspective of, let's say you don't have any senior management or anyone at the top really supporting this initiative. Let's say you are someone in the ranks of the organization, right? Maybe you're just an employee, a manager, but at a lower level. How can you sort of institute this change, right? And I think that's a very difficult thing to do. Let's be upfront about that. And that's why I'm bringing this different perspective. It is a very difficult thing to do. No matter what, in which organization you are, and how large the organization is, even in a smaller 100, 200 member organization, it's going to be a difficult thing to do. And I think the best bet would be one. Do a project, do some work that sort of demonstrates this to someone with influence, who can, in the journey, act as a champion of your cause, right? If you're able to convince that one person, I think in the longer run, that person can champion this cause for you within the organization and help sort of pass this message on, right? And as it percolates at the senior level, I think then we can take it to the further step of science. And as you were mentioning, can we then sort of do it top down? So, bottom up is always going to be difficult. Try to get a champion, try to change their mind, show them results by working on certain projects, and it can be quantified, right? There are ROI calculators for design, etc. We can sort of bring that forward and say, okay, if this is the language that the organization understands, let's present it in numbers. Let's quantify it, let's show it, but let's get a champion and let that champion sort of really help us in the hard work of percolating this message in the organization. So I think that's another perspective.
I will just add to that. I'll just take two examples, and then we will see how the design thinking can be built into an organizational process. Compared to, say, 1960s, 70s, and 80s to the 2020s, do we all agree that the number of accidents, air accidents, have reduced substantially, and there's a lot more confidence to fly than what it used to be some 20, 30 years ago? What do the audience feel? Yeah, anyone can answer. So yeah, you're all saying that there is a tremendous amount of reduction in the number of accidents or the number of deaths due to air crash and things like that. How did they achieve that? It is because fortunately they have something called a black box in every aircraft, and once the black box has been recovered in any accident, they do a lot of analysis on that, and they set up a team to see that that kind of a problem does not recur. Mostly, you don't see the same problem happening in another aircraft, and there's aircraft crash happening. That is because they have institutionalized the design thinking in the airline industry so much that for every problem, they constitute a multidisciplinary team which goes into the various dimensions of it and understand from the problem perspective and develop alternatives and solutions. And over a period of time, they have been able to substantially reduce those problems. Now compare that with the healthcare industry. We all know healthcare industry in US is supposed to have been very well developed, but we all also should know that the largest fatality in US happens because of the heart related diseases. The second largest is because of the cancer, and the third largest is because of medical negligence. Medical negligence continues to be, I think even in the pandemic we have seen several people have reported several times that they were not adequately equipped to handle. The negligence was also a contributory factor. One of the, and in India, I don't know, we have no clue about it. I'm sure the number of deaths that are happening because of medical negligence must be phenomenally high here. One of the reasons probably is that the medical sector, the healthcare sector, has not institutionalized a process of anything going wrong, going and analyzing it with multiple perspectives, or rather, let me put it this way, applying the design thinking process into the medical negligence of problems or the medical issues in the hospitals, and therefore they do not have the institutionalized solutions for them, and hence we continue to have the same issues. Maybe some hospital has some fire accident, similar thing happened in some other state, people die of some during the flood situation, people die, fire accidents, people die, negligence by the medical practice, it happens. All that is happening because in one sector there's absolutely no thinking of applying the design thinking. So for some of you who are asking that is only for the medical, the engineering sector, no. Even in a sector like healthcare, where it's purely service oriented, this attitude, if we can cultivate among the hospital administrators and the doctors there, perhaps we can bring down the number of fatalities. So that is a contrasting picture where one industry thrives because they have been able to use the design thinking in a very productive way and they have been successful. The other area where we have still not applied, where there's a lot of opportunity. So Aisha says design thinking needs to be institutionalized. Absolutely, I think that is one of the things that we are trying to do by conducting these kinds of programs. And over to you, Hema. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think those were very relevant examples and food for thought for all the participants. We are coming to the end of this session and this day. The intent of the sessions today was just to set up your minds to receive all that is coming in the next few days. Mr. Santan and Professor Rao will be doing a deep dive into a lot of topics, and we need to make sure that our minds are open to receiving all of this, not only information that is coming our way, but all of these fantastic examples and frameworks and all of that, right? So I think it's a fantastic sort of run up to that. And what I'm going to do now is present my screen for one last time and talk about some values in design or in design thinking. And I know there is a separate session that is organized for human values. There is also, I know Professor Rao has earlier shown me a presentation, regarding human values, but I just thought I'll leave you with a quick summary of what I think is relevant to the design thinking process. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So you have seen this at I think Mr. Ravikant's presentation. You will be seeing this model. It's from the D School, Stanford School of Design, where they talk about this 5-stage process. What I would like to do is overlay this with some human values. To me, the first is Satya, right? So empathize equals to Satya, right? What do I mean by this? In the empathize process, or at least in part of that stage of the process, you should have the attitude of seeking the truth, right? Satya is truth. You need to really go deep and understand people's problems, right? You need to delve deeper. You have to delve deeper into what people are not only saying, but what will they do? What are they feeling, right? So that to me is empathize. Satya is empathize, right? The next step is define, which is to me dharma, right? You have to define the problem with righteousness in your heart, right? Dharma is righteousness. You need to set the correct boundaries. You need to define the problem correctly, right? So that to me is dharma, the defined stage. Next is ideate, which to me is prema. What is prema? Prema is love. You need to ideate with love, right? You need to visualize solutions that will fill people's lives with love. It's a wholesome solution, like I was talking about earlier. You need to ideate with love. The second last is prototype, right? And that to me is Shanti. What I mean by that is, as you're coming to this prototype stage, there will be so many things running in your mind. You want to do this, you want to build this prototype, you want to build that prototype. I think you have to take an approach of Shanti. You have to go about building the prototypes peacefully. There will always be a lot to do. You need to prioritize and build it peacefully, right? And the last stage is test, right? Where you take your solution, you take the prototype to the market. And that to me is analogous to ahimsa. Why ahimsa? Because you need to test with a non-violent attitude. You need to be non-judgmental of the responses. When you're presenting a solution that you have built, it is close to your heart. If people are not understanding, they're rejecting, it is natural for us to get angry, right? But we have to be non-judgmental. We have to go beyond the words that we are hearing. We have to understand again. We have to go back to Satya, right? We have to seek the truth. You have to have the attitude of seeking the truth. And therefore they say this design thinking is not a linear process. It is not a linear process because you need to go between all these stages all the time. But this is my take on how universal human values applies to, our design thinking. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation. This slide you would recognize from the beginning of the presentation, where we took a moment to appreciate, what we have in our life. But really, this picture also represents, what God has designed for us. He is the master creator, right? And he has designed a beautiful universe for all of us to inhabit. And I think with that, I would like to thank him, and I would like to thank all of you and to Professor Rao for giving us this presentation, for the opportunity to take this presentation. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing right now. And with that, I will end my presentation and hand over once again to Professor Rao.
Thank you, Hemant. I think it was a wonderful session and quite a lot of food for thought for all of us to think about it tonight before we come back for tomorrow's session. Any questions from the participants? Kindly let's have some interaction. All of us are here, and particularly Mr. Hemant is very much there to answer you.
Sir, this is Jay Jivagan from Chennai.
Yeah.
Actually, every organization is doing some kind of design work. Now we are talking about design thinking. What's the exact difference? How design thinking is different from there, or how it is better from there?
Okay. Yeah.
I will sort of take that question to mean what is happening in, let's say, organizations that are not employing design thinking techniques, right? I think I mentioned this briefly. When organizations approach design, they take a very short-term view and really don't take the overall perspective, right? Like I was saying, let's say we need to design a brochure. Let's put together something that looks good, right? We need to design a website. Let's build something that we can put to market very quickly. Just give the important information, and they sort of take the approach of like, okay, my contact information should be there. I need to tell the the marketplace about what I am doing, and put all that information in the website and put it out, right? Or if you're building an application, right, this is what the creators think, that this is what the market needs. Let's go about designing it that way, right? So these are, again, may not be representative of all the things that are happening. I'm sure a lot of organizations are doing very good work, but I'm just taking some random examples of what it could mean, right? What they're actually doing is taking a very short-term view of what design is, or what the designer's role is, right? I try to bring in through my presentation of how a designer's role and design's role is much, much broader than that, right? It actually is not exclusive outside of what the business wants to do. The design team and the designer wants to bring a wholesome solution which is conducive to the business, which works for the financial health of the business, and as well as works for society, right? That is how design thinking is different, right? And that's how you will learn. As I keep saying, that we still have 4 days to go, where you will learn much more. But that's how, in a very broad sense. Again, I'm not speaking in specifics right now, because I want us all to go through these 4 days of sessions that we have. But you will also come to this conclusion, right? So that's how design thinking will provide that overall solution that will be an elegant solution for everything, right? So that's the process by which we will get there, and we need to be a little patient about that. Would you like to add anything, Professor Rao?
Yes, I think we have really, in our context, design thinking is embedded into the Indian culture. But somewhere we have gone on to the Western method of managing businesses and Western way of developing our own, structures, and we have lost, track of what we have done in our past. I think you have brought out a very good perspective of how the 5 stages of what the D-school thinking is being reflected in our Indian way of Indian culture of practicing it. We talk about design in the industry parlance as of now, as Mr. Hemant said, purely from the commercial gains point of view, and a lot of our social problems we have not addressed because we have not applied these kinds of solutions. We have had several, starting from the 1940s, for problem solving. A lot of methods have come into the industry, and industries have thrived. But why today the design thinking is important is not because it is going to benefit the industry alone, it is going to benefit the society at large. We are going to have some lasting solutions to various problems that we are facing, and that is why I think the overdrive to get design thinking into the university campuses, educational institutions, and drive it through the society, because our problems are much more deeper. So while design has been there for a long time, and design has been understood to be something aesthetically good looking, nice feeling, but then that is not enough. We need to focus more on the solution part of it, which are good from the user's point of view. That I think is the fundamental to the design thinking, and cultivating that thinking is what we are trying to aim at. I think Deepa has raised her hand. Floor is given to Deepa. Yeah. Yes, Deepa, please go ahead. Hello. Deepa, please ask your question. Yeah, if she's taking some time, there is I think I have expressed what I wanted to express. Anything more from your side, Hemant?
No, sir. Anything Sayantan would like to say?
Nothing like that.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions here. What is the panel's take on the COVID vaccine, which seemed to be brought out in a shortcut method?
So I think you're best placed to answer that.
The question has the answer itself. The answer is there in the question itself. I think you have said it. It has been brought out in a very shortcut method. Probably all the processes have not been met, but I think sometimes the political experience is more important than the method that we have been talking about. So I leave it at that.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, there are. Design had been part of Indian culture, but cost savings had taken a precedence over design. I think next generation in India will bring back design in products and services. I think this is a fantastic myth that we have. I think that myth has to be burst. Design thinking is not expensive. Design solutions are not expensive. That is what we have said. The Design Management Institute, DMI, has done empirical research and found that those companies which are actually adopting the design thinking are far more profitable, and they are doing much better for their stakeholders than those who are not following the design thinking. So don't be under the impression that design thinking is expensive and therefore it is not possible for others to implement. It is just, design thinking is another way of life, and if you develop that mindset, you will find solutions for many problems with greater ease, because it is a collaborative model of finding solutions. Design thinking is not top-down approach. It is a collaborative model of finding solutions, and therefore it works, and it works profitable.
Yes, sir. I think I would like to add over here.
Yeah.
That, design thinking actually is the most cost-effective method, right? It is going to save any organization a lot of money, right? Just imagine this, that I want to build a feature, right? I think we are all familiar with something like Facebook, right? Now imagine that we have to build, let's say Facebook did not have the like button, right? And they wanted to build a like button, right? Now, instead of investing, let's say, probably tens of programmers to build that like button, right? Who would take a lot of time. They would need to code it, they would need to test it, they would need to test it for scale, whether everything is operating. There would be typically months of effort from a lot of engineers in order to build this, right? And let's say they finally build the like button and they put it out there, and nobody liked it, right? They have just invested so much of resource. This is the time, they have paid very highly paid software programmers to build this. They have paid software testers to test it, They have spent all of this time. The opportunity cost is there, and they have taken something to market which the market disliked, right? And the market rejected. It is a very expensive proposition. If you followed like a design approach, right, you could quickly, conceptualize it. Then you could test it with a small market. Maybe it could just be a paper prototype, right? You could say that, okay, the feed is there. I will give you this like button, and would you like this? And they could see the reaction first from a qualitative aspect, right? They could see it from a qualitative aspect and see, okay, how are people reacting to this? Are they liking it, right? If they found that enough people are liking it, then instead of building a scalable solution that could be rolled out to all the millions and millions of Facebook users, let's say they built a small solution. They actually coded it, but instead of investing months of time to build a scalable solution, they invested just a few developers and they rolled it out to a small population of, let's say, 1 lakh or 10 lakh users, right? Now they can actually gather data from the system saying that, are people liking this? Are they reacting well to this, right? So now they have taken the design, user-centered design thinking approach where they are, ideating, the prototyping and validating. They're testing it out. And when the results come back to say that, okay, if the results came back to say that, okay, the users do not like this, then what, just by investing the time of those few designers and few engineers, they have validated the end result saying that the market will not like this because our representative sample, we have, let's say, a statistically significant result saying that the market will not like this. So let us not build a completely scalable solution by investing hundreds, possibly even a few $1 million to actually build this out, right? So actually taking this approach of prototyping, design thinking will save you a lot of money. It is the most cost-effective solution. It is not an expensive solution, right? So just an example to share with you.
Sir, this is Prabhu. May I come in, sir?
Professor?
This is Prafulla from Institute of Rural Management, Anand.
Yes, Prafulla, please go ahead.
Sir, what I am just a student of design thinking. I understood design thinking is just like a tripod. That means it rests on three basic things. One is human, and at the end is the empathy. And in between the two, there lies a process. Earlier, the traditional way of thinking, problem solution, there is an accountant, there is an engineer, there is a consultant. But they are all professional. Where is the human being? Human being means for whom we are designing things. So now we should consider things from a humanistic approach. And for that, we need an elaborate process. If we can join these two aspects, then it will be recognized as a design thinking. So this is my understanding about design thinking. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what you said is a lot of meaning in that. Essentially, here we are talking about the human-centric approach, and what a lot of others have been talking about here is why this is not making much advice, because we are still business focused. That is the reason why I think it is taking time in Indian context. But there are a couple of other questions as well here. One is, if the design thinking was the most effective in global companies, why has that not helped organizations during the pandemic? I don't know, Deepa, can you explain in what way, in which context are you asking this?
Sir, good evening, and I appreciate the whole session, but it was just a thought. The pandemic situation has got us all very, in a very different shape. Most of the employees, be it products, both in service and in the production sectors, have lost markets, right? And also, this has affected the employees at large. Now, there could be people who are skilled. There are people who are better knowledgeable and better design thinkers also in their own ways, right? but we will not be able to find an employment in this particular pandemic situation. And likewise, the organizations are not able to come up with certain solutions which is viable for all of its employees or for its production processes or for the services industry as such. So how is it that we can evolve? Every person or every individual, every organization as a team is trying to evolve some kind of a process which could help the society at large. I mean, after all, it's a person's earnings that can help his family. So is the society. And so how what is the design thinking role as far as an organization is concerned during a crisis period like this?
Would any one of you like to answer anything, or should I go?
Yeah, you go ahead, Hemant. Then I'll.
Okay. So I'm not going to answer this very directly, Ms. Deepa. I'm sure Santan and Professor Rao also will have their take on this. What I want to bring into the picture is basically a much broader view of the whole scenario, right? Design thinking is a process to get to a solution, right? But here we are presented with a different problem. It's a new problem, right? And maybe the old methods do not work anymore, right? And if I go back a century, right, when automobiles were coming into the picture, right? At that time, if you asked people that, and they were riding horses at that time, and it was the primary, let's say, mode of transportation. If you ask people at that time, what do you want? Like, if you just ask them what you want, they would say, I want a faster horse, right? Can you breed a faster horse which can run, let's say, faster, eat lesser, easier to maintain? They would say stuff like that, right? But the paradigm shifted, right? Motor cars came into being, right? That's how the sort of the problem area of transportation was probably the same, right? But the solution to it was different, because if you get into the depth of it, people wanted a faster, cheaper, easier to maintain mode of transportation, which became possible in the automobile, especially with with Ford implementing the assembly line, right? When it became affordable to really own a car, right? So we have to get into the depth of it. There is the waxing and waning of business cycles. There are a lot of factors that are there in environment, right? How do we want to tackle this problem? Even now, even in this pandemic situation, we have, let's say, we have heard news stories of where distilleries were converted to making, using the same ingredients like alcohol, converted to making hand sanitizers, right? They sort of pivoted to that, right? There are so many examples like that. But how do you take this framework, this process, and apply it innovatively to the problems at hand? That's one way. I mean, there are many possible solutions, but just beating a dead horse is probably not one of that. Again, it's a very broad answer, I know, but taking a very broad perspective, I think that's what I wanted to bring in. But I can sort of jump back in after I hear from Sayantan and Professor Rao. Yeah, Sayantan, please.
Yeah, I think you actually have given the main crux of what I was about to say. This is actually, that's the thing. The problem, I think, what Deepa ma'am, you just spoke about, is that there is right now also, we are not out of this economic crisis. Yes, we have an economic crisis, and the crisis is mainly because not for the reason that there is no money, but people right now have a doubt on that, how much to keep in hand and how much to put out. Now, this is true for both sides. This is true for both the organization who are not able to, at least, I mean, we are coming out of that situation, but imagine the time of the lockdowns when things were pretty bad. You had made the stocks are piling up in your yard, and you are not sure that whether those will be sold because you don't have any experience before of how a pandemic works. If you say, for example, if there was an earthquake, or for example, there was a tsunami, you know that this thing comes, this thing goes, there is a curve which gets in and out. Now, this was unique. This is something that most of the world has not seen before. So it was more or less unprecedented. Having said that, Now, can design thinking actually help you out? Actually, it has not. It not only helps you out. There are different companies who have cashed upon it, and they have, I mean, used design thinking to identify the correct pain points of individuals. I'm not talking about any big company, but there was one small company which I know, run by one of my friends, and he's a social entrepreneur. What he did essentially is, during the time when the lockdown was happening, and these people, the migrants, they were not able to come back. What he did is, he started creating he actually created a sustainable business, not very profitable, but a sustainable business, where he was able to provide food for areas around Bengal, where people were stuck. So he was people who were stuck within Bengal, and they were going to say, for example, Bihar. There's a lot of immigrants from there. He actually could provide them food, and he was also getting money out of it. Now the point is, we may ask the efficacy of the whole thing, that whether that was right or wrong. Honestly speaking, a business has to run. It has to be sustainable. One thing is charity, another thing is business. So he could actually create this, identifying where the problem lies, identifying how much the stakeholder, in this case the immigrants, they can pay, or probably somebody on for the immigrants, not the immigrants, and on for somebody is paying in this whole stuff, and the whole thing keeps on running. So people have actually used design thinking, identify exactly where all to put the money, come up with solutions, and use during this pandemic situation as well. So mostly this is something that I can think about, ma'am, if this answers your question.
Actually, to approach this question raised by Deepa in a different, from a different perspective, the question she's asked is, if design thinking was the most effective in global companies, why has that not helped organizations during the pandemic? Somebody during the lockdown period, is when I was talking to on phone, somebody said, every religion has great stories about God coming to the rescue of the human beings and saving the humanity from so many demons and devils and all that. We are all told about the stories. Somebody said, he was shouting, why can't God come and stop this, virus? Why are we closing on all this? I think that approach would not work. That does not undermine whatever has been happening. For every problem, the solution, the response time, the cycle time is not the same. The response time changes. I'm sure with so much of know-how and so much of knowledge and technology today, the response of humanity to a pandemic like the coronavirus will be very, very different from what it was in 1918 when it happened and several crores of people have died. Definitely the number of fatalities are much lesser now. We have got better understanding of how to handle this at a quicker pace. But next 100 years, well, whether this will repeat, I'm sure that we will have better solutions. So don't think that design thinking is some magic wand and it can just give solutions for everything. It will definitely give solutions, but I think that it has its own cycle time. Because somebody is asked, what is the cycle time for a design thinking solution? It can change. It can be very different from the kind of problem, the kind of context that we are dealing with. So have patience. I think the lessons learned from this pandemic and how to convert the problems into solutions and then opportunities will come into the realm of academics, and all of us will deal with that. So have faith in what we are doing, and that will take us forward. But there is a very interesting question here for Hemant. The question says, can you please, with an example, elaborate more on parallel drawn between design phases and concepts like prema and ahimsa? They want an illustration. You have given a perspective from the Indian culture and the context. So can you create it with an illustration?
I think Professor Sandesh has asked this question. So Professor Sandesh, why don't we come up with an example right now? Like, why don't you give us what you're thinking or anything that you have told your students? You know, let's see if we can attempt it.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, what actually I was thinking that the parallels were drawn between these concepts, but coming from a computer science background, I was actually thinking that was it more like an agile project development thing, that where we iteratively build things, where we say that you just start with what goes a simple concept, then you start building up upon this particular software. So that was I was thinking what we can parallel between what we can say design thinking and agile or iterative kind of software engineering from a computer background that I'm from. Actually, I was thinking that when you draw on this particular elaborations of a parallel between the design phases and the concepts, actually I was thinking, is there any particular example through which we can tell our students that these are the things like prema and ahimsa, these are the concepts of the design phases, and can we have an example, for example a real-time case study or an example that this particular product, when we think about this particular product, and these are the concept of a human nature, and this is the how a product is built. So I wanted to have an example over that. So a case study, this is the, for example, I'm sitting in front of my laptop, a laptop is there, a laptop is built in by, for example, design thinking with these 5 phases and a parallel that you have drawn. So how we can say that these are 2 parallel things and they work together. So this is what I was looking at.
Right. So I don't think there is a case study out there going to encompass this, because when I was thinking how to present these concepts in context of our values, this is what I put over there. But the way I see it, you know, the way I've laid it out, I think that it applies. Let me actually share the screen so that everyone can again have a look at what I'm talking about. Just give me a moment. Right. So yeah, so these are the values and these are the stages. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Right. So what I'm saying is that it applies as a principle, as a universal value to all of these stages, right? When I say empathize and when I say, you know, here we are seeking the truth, right? So it can be any problem, it can be any case study, it can be any context, right? But what does empathize tell us in the design process? That you need to identify and really dive into the deepest problem of the user, right? This is human centric design and this is where it starts. So what I'm saying over here is that you need to get to the deepest truth, right? Behind what people are telling you, you know, what is the truth that you're seeking, and that is satya. That is what I'm saying. Then I'm saying that you need to define the problem appropriately, because you know you could come up with so many solutions in the ideate phase, right? But then your definition should be within the bounds of righteousness, of dharma, right? Like we spoke about the Western influence. We here we are trying to bring in what our Indian values are, right? So we need to define the problem within the bounds of our dharma, right? That is what I'm saying. And when you ideate, right, you have to think about the end result, right? What are the ideas that you want to come up with, but you have to approach it with love again, right? You have to keep the necessary end user goals in mind when you ideate, so that you come up with a beautiful solution that takes into consideration all stakeholders, right? So again, that is ideate. Then in the next step, prototype, what we do is we build, you know, like it could be any type of prototype, hardware, software, paper prototypes, or there's so many, right? But what I'm saying over here at this stage is that when you prototype, there are so many things competing, you know, for your attention in your mind. You know, you want to do this, you want to do that. But what I'm saying is, please approach it peacefully, right? Think with a calm mind. That is shanti, right? Think about it and calmly, and then come up with a few things that you feel you should go and take to the next step, right? And in the next step is where you test. And when you test, right, most times it happens, and I'll repeat this example, most times it happens is when you build something on your own, right, you immediately have that attachment, like the child has to its mother, right, the mother has to his child, actually, right? You have created something, you are in love with it, and you are protective of it, right? But you need to get the feedback from the actual users, from the market, right? And you need to treat any feedback that you receive with ahimsa. Be non-judgmental, right? I'll repeat it again. Be non-judgmental. That is ahimsa, right? The non-violent attitude. Don't be judgmental. And then you can go back to empathize. And then this is an iterative process. It can continue in circles. It can continue between stages. You can define something, ideate, then come back to refine that definition. So all of this happens, and you'll learn more about this. But really, if you ask me, is there a case study? There isn't, because, I mean, I will have to go back and look for an example where something has happened, but people approached it like this. And maybe there are, because, yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. Yes, please carry on. I just, something occurred to me from the historical perspective of India. I'm Dr. Manmeet. I'm from Manav Rachna University, Faridabad. So, sir, I just aligned it with the Satyagraha movement of Mahatma Gandhi. If you see what he created, the prototype was of non-aligned movement in the long run of Nehru, and it started with Satyagraha and non-cooperation. And it started from ahimsa, from prema, which is like Mahatma Gandhi, being a well-educated barrister from London, ideating on the caste fracture lines of our society, and embracing the Harijans and calling them Harijans, in fact, coining the word, and then embracing them and bringing them into the main fold, and then going on to launch the biggest, till date, there's no parallel of that movement, the Satyagraha movement, which was a prototype and leading to ahimsa, even if we lead it to the, align it with the human values enshrined in our Indian ethos. So that's like prema leading to ahimsa, and even a prototype of an idea, not that it was a technology or a product, but that's how we ideate and we create things, and things leading to revolutions, I think, just from a metaphysical and a historical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manmeet. That's a beautiful example. Yes, I'm sure all of you could come up with examples on your own. I will also try and come up with examples, and let's share. We have certain projects in mind. We could take this as one of them, but I'll leave it to Dr. Rao now to take it forward.
Yeah, I think if you can just show that one slide once again, displayed once again, there are a lot of questions. I think it's intriguing to see. We are rattled by these questions related to the COVID. Just put it in the perspective of the COVID situation now, the COVID vaccine. Just display your slide once again. Maybe we will seek the views of the distinguished participants. Take Mr. Prakash Rao is asking, how would you judge COVID vaccine from this perspective? And there were a series of questions related to that. I think we can look at it, from the perspective of Satya, which is basically empathize from the design thinking process. I think all of us can try and answer to what extent the pharmaceutical companies are able to empathize finally with the victims or the users of the COVID vaccine, and to what extent we are truthful and honest in terms of the origin or the genesis of this particular virus. Then are we able to define the problem in the case of COVID 2019, whether we have been righteous in doing what we have been doing, or are there some business and political experiences which have driven us to this solution? Then ideate. I think there are 50 different solutions people are working on, but finally which works nobody knows. But everybody is in a race, therefore they are just rolling out without really knowing the consequences of it. Prototyping is what I think most of you are referring to, which has been fast-tracked. Instead of going through the regular routine, they have been fast-tracking, either because they are in a race for getting the business opportunity, or because they want to genuinely save the humanity from this pandemic. And finally, ahimsa, as all of us said just now, I think there are so much of differing opinions on that. We really do not know whether one should go for it or not go for it. I think if you want to really analyze the example given by Madam is very nice. I think we really appreciate it. That is the beauty of the diverse participation here. Bringing Satyagraha to the design thinking and trying to explain it is excellent example. But even from the pandemic also, you can try and analyze it. Maybe one of the participants can do that in more detail. So that's what I thought I would bring to the table for discussion. Yeah, any other questions?
Sir, I am Janakiram. This emotional intelligence program starts at what time, sir?
No. 1 second. I'm coming to that. Once we are done with this last 1 minute of Mr. Hemant, we will talk about it. Yeah. Right. Are we done with Mr. Hemant's program? Any questions left out, Mr. Sandesh?
Sir, no questions, but I would just actually ask the panelists or the resource persons to please explain with more detailed examples in tomorrow's session, so that we could, when we communicate with our students, we can have those examples with us, so that we can better explain them the things.
Absolutely. Fine. I think tomorrow you definitely will have more examples. Right?
Sir, as far as COVID thing is concerned, I feel it is also the vaccine being made, as the participants have asked, how the design thinking, it's a shortcut. So it can be aligned to the frugal innovation concept. Also, when we have lack of resources, we are in panic mode, kind of, where we need something very urgently to meet the necessity at hand. So I think design thinking has been operational in big organized pharma companies, wherein we have actually, been on our heels and innovated something within a short span of time. So I think design thinking has been used in many ways during the current pandemic situation. But then design thinking is also aligned to an array of parameters wherein the institutional mechanisms, the infrastructural mechanisms need to be in place. So when they are not in place, there is something happening out of exigency, and sometimes something beautiful comes up and sometimes things don't turn out that well. So I think that's what's happened. Thank you.
I think that's a perspective. Definitely, we appreciate that, ma'am. Here there are multiple perspectives, and unless something more comes out and more evidence comes in, we really cannot come to a conclusion. Yeah, one may call it as lean design thinking, frugal design thinking, whatever we want to, but it is probably it is premature. So on that note, I think we will close this session on nurturing design attitude. Thank you, Mr. Hemant, for very awesome discussion that you've created, rather than pushing through a lot of inputs using the PPTs. And as far as the examples are concerned, as we all know, design and design attitude are more sort of abstract concepts, and therefore it takes we may not have so many examples as you expected. Typically in a design thinking session, you will have a lot of successful experiments conducted by various organizations, but we didn't want to go in that way. We wanted to go drive this entire program in a different way, and you will see what is that we are trying to aim at, maybe only at the end of the program. So with that, we will come to the end of the second session, and I have sent you the link for the attendance. Kindly answer that. The next question is about the third part of the day, which is the emotional intelligence. So that is where I have been having a dilemma whether to continue that with in today's context, I mean today's schedule, or should we defer it to maybe tomorrow or so, when we can have a little more spaced out discussion rather than rushing it through. So depending on what you all would say, I would go according to that.
Tomorrow, sir.
At least an hour. At least an hour we should spend. Otherwise, if we don't do justice to it, whatever you all feel, we should go along with you. Yeah.
My stand on tomorrow.
Okay. About others generally, what about the?
I think, sir, we should go with tomorrow's schedule. We can continue tomorrow.
Tomorrow, sir. Tomorrow.
We could start 1 hour earlier tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. So we will deal with that
It will be
tomorrow.
better if we start at 1:30.
No. We will start at 2:30 only. Don't worry.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
We will stick to 2:30 to 7:30, but I will squeeze that in. We have lost some time in today's session. Therefore, I will make sure that it is we do full justice to emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
But before that, I just want to tell you what our thinking and why is this program unique. So if Hemant stops sharing the window, then I will upload one slide, and I will not take more than 5 minutes before we close the session for the day.
Five minutes.
Okay, not more than 5 minutes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I just want to share one slide. Basically, how are we looking at this entire program? And you can then, think about it, and then we will take it forward tomorrow. Fine. Now you see a picture. I basically want to explain what it is and how we are looking at this program on design thinking in a different way compared to what the general approach is. For us, emotional intelligence and the empathy part is very, very important in driving design thinking in any organization, whether it is educational, service, or product or engineering firm. Therefore, emotional intelligence, and with more focus on empathy, we are going to deal in greater detail. And that is the point where it integrates with the design thinking. And as Hemant said, he has brought in the concept of the Indian part. Tomorrow, I think Professor Ramancharla, a very, very distinguished professor, and who has been an advocate of universal human values, has agreed to take this session. He is going to tell in the context of any society for that matter, whether Indian or any society, these values are universal, and how these are to be integrated with the design thinking. But one can do design thinking without values. There can be, if you do so, whether that will be practicing the design thinking is a question. I think you will integrate that into the design thinking, and between me and Mr. Sayantan and Mr. Hemant, we will take you through all the 5 stages of the design thinking. And finally, the differential here, what we want to make is, how do you build these competencies at the individual level and at the organization level? Design thinking capabilities is what we are going to conclude the entire session with, and therefore you will see this gradual progress towards whatever you are asking. Some of these questions you will definitely find the definite answers in the next 3 to 4 days. So bear with us. Great to have you all here. Thank you for all your participation and patience. And we will connect tomorrow. But before going, one last thing I want to share with you is that we will have individual projects. And tomorrow, Mr. Sayantan Mukherjee is going to tell you about problem statement, or how do you actually identify an issue or a problem, and how do you state. That is the most difficult part of any solution. If you know what the problem is, it is much easier to find the solution. So after that, doing that session, you will have to do some work at home for the next 2 days, and you will have to submit a small one or 2 pages write up on the first 3 stages of the design thinking, and then the next 2 stages will be asked subsequently. So you will have to submit 2 different assignments, which will be done by you. And because it's an online program, we cannot have a big group of 8 to 10 people. We cannot conduct those kinds of sessions. We have generally planned to have each of the projects pair with another person, and these 2 people will together put in some extra effort, get together and review the work done by each one. So I will give my work to Sayantan, and Sayantan will give his work to me, and both of us will review each other's work and exchange the feedback. And based on that, some sample presentations will be made on the 4th and the 5th day. So the best of the presentations that we receive, 3 of us will agree on which are the papers for presentation, and those participants will have the opportunity to present in the program, and that will help to have hands-on experience of all these 5 stages of the design thinking process. It is not just you are listening to us or you are just making some notes. You will actually practice what we are discussing, right from the design concept to finally the part of the prototyping. Up to prototyping, testing you may not be able to do. So that is what we intend to do. And tonight we will send you the guidelines, and tomorrow you will have the more clear definition of what the project is. So with that, we will come to the end of the session. It's already 7:08. We wanted to close it by about 7:30, but since we are going to take more time in tomorrow, we will leave you at 7:30, 7:10 today, and tomorrow we will adjust it 1 hour of emotional intelligence session along with the others. Any questions? Any things that you want to ask now?
Thank you, sir.
Right. So we have made some progress, and tomorrow you will see the progress a little more, and we will accelerate in the next 3 days, so that in the end of this program you will have full hands-on knowledge and experience with the design thinking. Okay.
So my question was unanswered.
Yes, madam. What is that?
I asked a question whether, how important it is for designers to be in an organization. I specifically mean
one second.
management.
Yeah. 1 second. You know who's speaking?
I'm Yashasvi Anand, and I am from Hyderabad.
Okay. Please go ahead. Yeah, I did see that. I think we have somehow skipped that. So, okay. The question that you have raised is it necessary to have designers in every organization, and should they be at the top of the organization? Is that?
Yes, sir. So why? Because I come from a design background, and all through the today's session, what I understood was user friendliness, empathizing, sensitizing with the user holds a lot of importance. And this is exactly what we teach and what we have been taught in almost all the modules all through the 4 years of a course. So considering that, how important it is, that's what I wanted to know. Because
can I answer for this question?
Oh, yes. Sure. Go ahead.
In Harvard Business Review in 2015, there is an article published. That article says that Indira Nooyi, who made PepsiCo company, must follow the design strategy. She told that if anyone who don't follow the design as a strategy, I will be happy to attend your retirement function. And she gave 48 weeks time for all of them to cultivate design thinking culture. So therefore, she recommended all that in a boardroom of all board of directors room, design thinker must be part of it. Only then you can have a better culture, better designs, and better product and better profitability.
Yeah, Shashmi, does it answer your question, ma'am?
Not why? Because all through you have also been stating design thinking is not only specific to designers. Now my question here is, as designer, a designer who's been into the education and a field of design to be into the management or top management of organization.
I'm happy that you said that you are not fully answered. I think we are now differentiating between a designer and a design thinker. Design thinker. These are two different things. Not all designers are design thinkers, and a design thinker need not be a designer at all.
Absolutely.
Right. So what is this fine difference between a designer and a design thinker, and what do we mean that design thinkers should be the future of the boardrooms in the organizations, and why this should be a design thinking strategy should be applied in the organizations. We will be dealing with those areas tomorrow and the day after. What you have asked is very much there as a part of our deliberations. It will come up for discussions in the next 2 days.
I'd like to sort of leave you with an example. I mean, we took that example of Apple, where they have the highest market capitalization, and after Steve Jobs, who was the most important person in that company when Steve Jobs was there? It was Johnny Ive, right? It was a designer. So there is no doubt that organizations are changing. Designers are getting a seat at the table at the top management. Things are changing. You have chief design officers, getting there and it's a topic that will be covered by Professor Rao. It's the institutionalization of design and design thinking practices. So organizations are getting there. It is important, and it is the future. So I hope that sort of answers a bit of the question you had in your mind.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello. Can I speak, sir?
Professor
Yes,
Rao,
hello.
I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Deepikanta Chakraborty. I'm from Adamas University, Kolkata. So first of all, thank you for organizing such a beautiful session. My question is to Hemant sir. Sir, I have been entrusted with the task of teaching the students design thinking. So I'm a student of political science, that is a core art student. So what is the application of social science? First of all, I want to thank you because you have covered almost all the parts, basically management, economics and other fields, human value also, engineering, everything. So somehow being a student of political science, I'm lagging behind or I'm not understanding what is the application of this, design thinking in solving the very chronicle and crucial social issues. Is there any application, sir?
Absolutely. I mean, we could get into more examples. There are so many. I know between the three of us, Professor Rao, Sayantan, and myself, we have discussed that this question will come up. What we will do is, if this question is not answered through the various sessions that will be upcoming in the days ahead, we will send you examples of this. I will personally send you examples of this. So don't worry. I don't want to extend to this session, but I have some examples in mind, and we will share those with you. If not
sir,
already
I want
answered.
to share one thing. When I was given the task of teaching students, so at that time, actually, I'm an amateur here in this field. So when I was given a task of teaching students, what I did, I asked my students to pick few chronicle, very crucial social issues. So they picked obesity, which is a health issue. They picked dowry death. They pick many other issues, and they try to solve the way you have analyzed, how empathize, how to understand the problem first, then ideate the thing, prototyping the thing, and they are going. So in this way, being a student, being a teacher of this political science, I have employed my students to go like this. I'm not understanding whether it is the right way to teach them, from, they are from political science. Is it the right way to teach them design thinking or not?
Why not? My answer would be why not, right? But
Actually,
like I said, let's hold on to our horses.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be patient. Let's go through the program, right? Your questions will be automatically answered. And like I promised, if they're not answered, I think all three of us will jump and help you out. So don't worry about that at all, right?
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
I have a small question Actually, I put the question in the chat box also. I like to tell you slowly what is the name of the book. You said it, and also website.
Yes,
the name
sir.
of the book. You said, and also the name of the website.
All the resources and the websites we will share on the last day of the session together. Whatever we have used, they will all be shared and they will all be sent to the participants without any exception. So please hold on. I think everything will be shared with you. Okay.
Okay. So,
yeah. Right. There are a lot of, I think, as the discussion is progressing, there are a lot of interesting perspectives. Nobody has intellectual property rights on design thinking, but on design, yes, absolutely. Design thinking is a process, and the output of that is some product or a service. And there you can have some kind of intellectual property. And even that is going to be covered on the last day of the program. What next after design thinking? You will hear some perspectives on that. Yeah, all those questions that you're raising, I'm happy that we have been able to raise these questions, and a good number of them will be answered in the normal deliberations. If something is not answered, we will personally make sure that we will reach out to you and answer them. Okay. All three of us are going to be there on all the three days, and we will be interacting with you. Okay. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful. On that note, let me wish you a very, very happy evening for the day, and look forward for meeting you tomorrow at 2:30. Thank you, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Wish you a good
Thank
evening.
you, sir. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir?
Yeah?
Bhaskar, sir. Sir,
yes.
Actually, I want to answer the question what Madam was asking.
Yes, sir.
Sir, actually, she was asking that to teach the political science, how can apply the design science?
Yeah.
Yeah, but design science is something like continuity science, right? Which will be applying for industry separately, the societal industry separately, and to the individual level separately. As it is said in Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, the design science for political science, it need to be applied by the time and horizon levels. As the time and the place is changing for the people and citizens who are applying for what, then the design thinking application will change. As she is going to apply for the political scenario, it depends upon the madam which political scenario she is taking as an example in that class to which she is going to teach. She can apply it, because political theories are very different and very diversified.
Okay. Okay. No, I take your point. No, but what we have said is that these things will be covered in the next 2 days, because some of these issues we have foreseen, and they're all integrated into the next 3 days.
The
deliberation.
interdisciplinary approach subject, sir.
Absolutely. No, we have thought about all these dimensions, and including the issues about COVID, the social sciences, and economic issues, and all that. We will definitely touch upon them in the next 4 days. Thank you. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you for your perspective. Yeah, Mr. Prabhat, anything that you want to share?
Yes, sir. Actually, I was trying to fill the feedback form, but the fields are not active. So if you support in forming a group, WhatsApp group, wherein the link is shared, and then I think it would be easy to fill the feedback form instantly. So is there any solution now for the 2 previous lectures for which I haven't filled up the form?
Did you receive the email in your box?
Yes, sir. Email is there.
Yeah, check the email box. For each session, I'm sending email box also. You are receiving an email with the link. You just click on that. You will it will open.
I have received the mails when I was trying to fill up the fields. Fields are not likely to be active. I think fields are inactive now.
No. They are still very much active, and you should be able to fill it. You should be able to fill it.
Okay.
They have not been closed.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mr.
Good
Vidya
evening,
Sagar.
sir. Yes, sir. Vidya, sir. This is Vidya Sagar from Pune. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. My query is
It says that I have registered in Atal platform in different email ID, and I have joined the Google Meet different email ID. Is any issue? Because whenever I want to join, because cell phone, that is automatically there is not available this.
No, if there's any issue, I'll let you know tomorrow. Now that you mentioned this to me, I'll remember that and I'll let you know. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Yes,
so good evening.
Dr. Shah.
This is yes, please. So good evening. My gratitude. It is wonderfully started and very wonderfully conducted throughout the day. Looking forward for emotional intelligence to be held by you. So my concern is that do we have a WhatsApp group for this FDP so that we can be
So far, I have not done, but we will do it now.
Yeah, that will be helpful for all of us to share all the information and our questions in there.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Then we will disperse for the day, and we'll catch up tomorrow. Yes, Mr. Vidyasagar, we'll create one and we'll let you know. You will be a member of that. Yeah.